OG Mud. Where we at with it?
Previously on Bitter Dose TV.
Something that I think is interesting that Woody says, and this is like kind of the side that I fall on though, is that like it seems weird sometimes if we understand that racist outcomes can be a result of non-racist actors, there has to be some line where like is every single potential behavior, like do we always like all of these need to be eliminated, or can any of these ever be normalized at any point in time?
Fetishizing culture is normal in my opinion, right?
Mhm.
But the issue that I have with it is there's certain stereotypes that perpetuate tropes in our society that are harmful to this day, right?
Mhm.
And they have a history, and they continue to perpetuate that history. So a white kid wants to dress up, as in Woody's example, as a black basketball player, right?
Mhm.
What is the point of painting his face black if we're trying to get to a racially neutral point in America?
I was in a call, and a guy joined, and he said, "What's up, my soft days?" Right? So people went bonkers on him. They said, "Oh my God, how can you do that?" And he's like, "Man, I thought I was depowering the word. I thought that, like, when I used it in a positive way, that he thought that he was like improving the world, and everyone else saw it and felt like he was making it worse." But like, I get the spirit of why he thought he was doing a good thing. It's just people aren't ready for good things yet.
Do you think that jokes about like Irish or Italian people are like okay? Like if somebody wants to dress up as the Godfather, or if a non-Irish person wants to wear green on like a St. Patrick's Day, Arian, do you think that those types of things are generally okay, or do you think that that's like punching down or not good?
I don't think they're the same. I think there's apples and oranges.
Well, sure. I'm not trying to say one is the same. I'm just saying, like, in general, should it not be okay? And I'll just tell you where I'm going with this. Because my question would be that, like, at one point in time, Irish Americans and Italian Americans were heavily discriminated in the United States. They had a pretty bad history when they were first brought over. But nowadays, like, generally, at least as far as the U.S. is concerned, Irish people and Italian people are just white people now. They're more or less
And there's
integrated.
the
in
reason
culture.
why that is.
All right, barring their actual physical appearance, people make this comparison a lot without actually knowing the history. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into it because I'm going to do projects in the future where I go over this in great detail. But in the 1800s, there were Irish enclaves within the United States. And yes, there were efforts to limit their power in politics. Now, they were able to fight off these local attacks. But to deal with this issue nationally, the Irish made political alliances with slave owners on the basis of whiteness. And also in the 1800s, there were 9 Italian immigrants who were the victims of lynchings in New Orleans. What the American government did to resolve this was to pay reparations to the families of the victims and to create pro-Italian propaganda. Now, of course, there's a lot more that goes into these stories, but the point is that these two groups had issues in this country, and there was a concerted effort to not only resolve those issues, but to normalize these groups of people. And we're not talking about after generations of fuckery. We're talking about within a short time period of them actually coming to this country. Now, this comparison not only has problems as far as comparing what these groups went through versus what black people went through, but also it has problems when comparing the resistance to the integration of these groups.
Sure. But like, so I feel like today when people view things like like an Italian joke. So for instance, Cuomo, I suck at pronouncing his name. When Chris Cuomo got called a Fredo, everybody made fun of him because it's like, dog, you're Italian. Who cares? Like nobody's actually discriminating against Italians in the U.S. I feel like Woody's argument is kind of like, if obviously this is very far down the road, but if we were at a point where Black people had similar socioeconomic outcomes, similar educational opportunities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that like certain types of jokes or dressing up and charcoaling your skin to look like a basketball player wouldn't be like a big deal. Do you think there's like a meaningful difference between those two things, how we treat Irish and Italian Americans now versus how we might look at African Americans in Woody's idealistic world, 100 years from now?
I think the Black American experience was extremely unique. Like, and so to say, can we look at it like we used to look at Italians or Irish people? It's just not the same, right? It's just apples and oranges in my mind. And so to say, like, do I wish that
take the red pill, Woody,
we had the same socioeconomic circumstances to where there was equal opportunity, all of that? Of course I wish that was the case, but it's not the case right now.
One has to wonder, as you hear someone saying these things, do they consider in their mind that maybe, just maybe, they have their priorities all fucked up? Somehow, the goal is to get to a point where you can make fun of Black people without issue. And the parts that you're trying to skip past to kind of get to that point is the part where you create a society where Black Americans have similar social economic outcomes and similar opportunities. Now, given the history, I would say it's still debatable on whether or not we are going to feel differently about Blackface. But why the fuck does that matter? If you really cared about making this a better society, the concern would not be about whether or not you can make jokes about a certain group. I would think the concern would be about whether or not those groups are having successful outcomes and opportunities on par with everyone else in this fucking society.
And idealistically, Woody's view is one day, and tell me if I'm wrong, Woody, I don't want to misrepresent you, family, is one day when a little white kid dressed up in blackface, Black folks don't get offended, right?
To take it a step further, I wish they felt honored, right? Like,
perfect. All right, cool. All right. And so my idea, Destiny, is that one day white kids don't want to dress up in blackface at all.
Why?
What the fuck do you mean? Why? What do you mean? Why, nigga? Do you understand what that shit means? Well, I don't think you understand what that shit means.
No, well, in this context, they're picking a hero.
That hero locks people up.
Matisse Thybulle locks people up.
Now, I'm not going to sit here and act like Aaron's arguments have been flawless, but he's gotten his point across. And what you're seeing right here is that he's so frustrated with the fact that he's been talking to this motherfucker for an hour, putting together these arguments, while Woody gets to sit there and play dumb in ways that would not be acceptable in any other type of conversation. And that tends to be the most frustrating part. Because Aaron knows however the fuck this shit goes, he's going to be the motherfucker that's under scrutiny. Whereas Woody is continuously saying dumb shit, but he'll be able to leave this conversation and be taken seriously in this white-dominated society.
I don't know who, like, what do you...
He's talking about the coolest NBA player right now. His vlogs are blowing up. He's in the Disney bubble. He edits like a professional.
Sure, I'm talking about blackface. That shit has harmed people, Woody. That shit has ruined people's lives, Woody. People were on death row and died because of that shit, Woody.
This is what it sounds like.
You might not agree with the reasons as to why, but it happened. It happened, and it continues to happen. And so you're saying we should feel honored that somebody wants to put black on their face when they reap the benefits of not having black on their face? No. Hell no.
Wait, can you say that? I'm Lightly, would you repeat that? Because my donation was in my ear at the same time. I had to.
I got you. You want me to feel honored that a little white kid wants to put black on his face.
That he wants to be like you.
Woody, you want me to feel honored that a little kid wants to be like me and put black on his face, okay? And me knowing the historical context of what that means and what that has done to our people in this country, I reject that wholeheartedly, passionately.
I'm bummed.
And
that
in
you
your
do.
idealistic world, you are exuding exactly what we call privilege. You want people to dress up like you, Woody, because there's never been ramifications of anybody getting in any kind of trouble because they look like Woody. Matter of fact,
That's not the why. That's not the why. No, you literally said you want people to dress up with you, and this is why. And this, again, you do it again. You tell me what I'm thinking.
So he goes into explaining the anti-black biases that have been generated based off of shit like blackface. And he's made this point maybe, 20 times in the same conversation. And what he's trying to illustrate to Woody is that this is a false equivalency because there are different consequences involved. And as you've probably already noticed by now, Woody doesn't really have a retort. His only response is to continue to play dumb and act like he's being treated unfairly.
I want people to dress up as me. Not I want it, but if people choose to pick me for Halloween, it's like, I'm shocked they even thought of me. Right? Like literally.
You say this, but I think the two really big counterexamples that I can think of, because it's hard, I think, for I hate fucking using these words. For white straight people, it's hard for us to think of this because technically our categories are usually good. But there is a very rare intersection where people have made fun of categories. And for a bunch of people that say they don't care about identity, holy shit. The two best examples I can think of is how many geeks and nerds were mad when people pretended to be geeks and nerds on the Big Bang Theory. That was actually some shit that I saw. A ton of people. People don't talk about the show as much anymore, but there were a lot of white gamer nerd people on the internet that were so fucking mad that these guys were playing fake nerds on TV. They were so fucking upset about it. And the other thing I can think of is Jimmy Kimmel made 2 skits making fun of people that stream or watch streams. I don't know if you ever saw these. Yeah,
I did.
Oh my God. I think these might be some of the most heavily thumbs down videos on all of YouTube. And again, for people that are like, oh, we should be able to make fun of black people, Asian people, women, it should be fine. As soon as somebody says any jokes about gamers, white kids on the internet lose their fucking mind over it. We're into just shitting on white people, which this is somebody in chat said it best. This is like a white nationalist recruiting video.
And again, for people that are like, oh, we should be able to make fun of black people, Asian.
Sometime at night, call Malone, look up in sky and say, what the hell going on up there? Do UFO live on other planet, phoning home like E.T.?
Imagine thinking that a motherfucker could justify seeing this one video and becoming a white nationalist. If that's the case, how the fuck should black people feel about all these goddamn videos, plays, all this shit that has been going on? I mean, all this mistreatment that we have suffered going back way before this country was even founded. We are supposed to just get past that. While they get to run around and claim that this cut video gives them an excuse to continue the oppression of a whole group of people based on their skin color.
But that was there. That happened, and then there was a third thing. This is actually one of the things that changed my mind big time on representation. Because I used to say it shouldn't matter what you look like in media. Who the fuck cares? Why do you need to identify with somebody? But when they made a FIFA game that had a Hispanic main character, this was way back. I think in 2013 they did this. Again, white people lost their fucking mind. What the fuck, a Hispanic main character? This is weird as fuck. I don't understand this guy or whatever. And now you see a lot of people why is there a female lead? Why is this character gay? Is there a reason for it?
Why is it bad to have a Hispanic main? I think of Hispanic people as soccer players oftentimes.
Sure, yeah, but a lot of people got fucking mad at it when FIFA started doing it more in their games. Or it might have been a black main character, not a Hispanic main character. I don't remember. But people get.
But so black people play soccer too. Anyway, I don't get.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you. I agree that it's dumb, but people get mad over it. But yeah, I see gamers as a group get very, very, very defensive when anybody attacks gamers as a group, or when you see representation of gamers in media. Even people get really fucking mad at it. Even if you would say that well, who cares? It doesn't matter. And I think sometimes it can feel when you talk about blackface, well, shouldn't you be honored that some kids want to dress as basketball players? Sometimes people might try to if they were to turn the question around on you, they'd be okay, well, maybe the main characters in Big Bang Theory suck, but shouldn't you be happy that at the very least like you're seeing like nerd or geek representation, like, you know, on TV. And the responses that would come out would be probably similar as, you know, in other cultures' responses. You'd be like, well, that's not real gamer culture. Those guys aren't good representations. Those guys don't represent it in a good light. They don't know anything. The joke is that they are gamers. Like, it would be a lot of similar arguments you'd hear people make if you were, you know, stealing from or emulating somebody else's culture.
That whole time that Destiny was making that point, Woody was playing dumb like he didn't know what the fuck he was talking about. But that's not even the worst part. Watch this shit.
Do you see how that applies at all, Woody?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, like, yeah, I'm processing it actually. Gamers get upset. Here's one I've seen with gamers that actually every time I got upset. They said, all right, this guy killed that guy. And that guy played Call of Duty. So we infer that Call of Duty made him so violent. It desensitized him to murder. And I'm like, bro, a lot of people play Call of Duty. Some percentage of murderers are going to have a cross section with people that play Call of Duty. Like it doesn't mean Call of Duty made him desensitized to murder. It's just, it was a super popular game at the time.
Mhm.
So I didn't like them assigning that like COD attribute and linking it with his murderous attribute.
Sure.
I'm not sure how that ties into this idea that, like, man, if a kid chooses Matisse as his hero, that's not okay. And he needs to pick a white hero because not cool.
It's not what we're saying at all.
Well, okay.
Do you see how he twisted the whole argument so that he could play the victim in this situation? He ignored every point that was being made on the other side. And now he's trying to make the argument be about how we don't want white kids to see black people as heroes. This fucking discussion is about blackface, not about whether or not white kids can have black heroes. No one has a fucking problem with that, and no one was questioning that. So where the fuck did that come from? But then he gets to act upset when motherfuckers say he's disingenuous.
To be fair,
He needs to choose him as a hero, and he can wear the clothes, but it stops there.
I think
is
there
that
a
right? Do I
world
have it
where
right?
At some point, I think it comes okay, but yeah.
I think you're attacking a straw man.
Help me.
You're talking about this issue where you refuse to acknowledge the historicity of the issues of painting your skin black.
I've acknowledged it several times.
So if you acknowledge it, then why won't you acknowledge the fact that it's harmful, regardless of who and what does it?
And I guess this is where Destiny's phrased it better than I did. Where it's like, man, there's this utopia, this future, where it stops being hurtful. It stops being mean. Where it turns into, you know, being a Matisse fan is no different than being a Spider-Man fan or a Tony Stark fan or, I don't know, pick your favorite dude, a Tom Brady fan. You know, that people aren't seeing color in this way. They're just picking guys they want to emulate. And
so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I think I was maybe I was going to repeat myself. They're picking guys they want to emulate, and they're doing that because they think highly of them. And it's, you know, like, this is such a dumb cause to argue for. I'm not pro blackface, but what I am is pro utopia. And, you know, and it's like, how do we get from here to there?
Maybe it started to click in his mind that he was saying a bunch of dumb shit. Because black people have been Spider-Man fans, Superman fans, fans of fucking white athletes. And at no point in time do I remember any black kid painting their face white so that they can be fucking Spider-Man or Superman or any goofy shit like that. If a motherfucker wants to be Tom Brady for Halloween, you know what they do? They buy a fucking jersey. And if anyone is confused about who they are, the ill thing about wearing a fucking jersey is that it says the fucking name on the back. But beyond all of that, listen to how he ended that shit. Like, in his mind, wearing blackface is key to having our utopia. Not eliminating the socioeconomic gaps between black and white Americans. It's when we make blackface acceptable. That's when we know we have a perfect society.
So I don't understand how you can be pro utopia and understand that you're. Let me hear me out. I don't
I
understand. how you
am.
can
I'll be
pro-
quiet on purpose.
All right. How can you be pro utopia and not understand that you're putting the cart before the horse?
Oh, I might be. No. I think I might be on the
This is
same
what it
page there.
sounds
I
like
think
to
we might
donate.
be
Your
100 years
point to
ahead of our time.
blackface is if we lived in a world
Okay,
where
so-
race
Donations
did not
in my
exist,
head.
blackface
Right. You can mute those, buddy.
would
But
not
what
be
I'm
a
saying
problem,
is,
simply imitation.
what
How
I'm
the
what
fuck
I'm
do you
saying
mute
is,
them? I'm sorry.
I don't know what program you use, but I use Streamlabs.
OBS. Anyway,
There's a mute thing. But my thing is the distinct difference of talking about black issues in America being a black human being is that it's not okay. And acquiescing to these kind of things makes people feel it's okay. Saying one day, man, you'll be able to wear blackface. Rather than saying one day, man, you won't have the urge to wear blackface because you are well aware of the history of and the damage that that has caused in our communities. That's where we differ. You're saying, wear that shit, man. You should be proud.
I wish you got
And
me
we're
right.
saying-
I'm
and we're
saying,
you're
I'm-
saying I should be honored. No. I'm not saying you. I'm not. Let me take it back. I'm not saying you saying I should be honored. I'm saying you're saying in your idea, if they dressed up as you would be honored. So you can't fully understand why we wouldn't be honored. Am I wrong in saying that?
it's so close. I would be honored. Same page there. I aspire that someday you'll feel the same way about it, right? Because
Yeah.
then we'll live in a colorblind society.
Got you. And what I'm saying is, I will never be honored by that, Woody.
Man,
The majority of our people, I'm not going to speak for them, but this is just how I surmise the situation, won't be honored by that either. What they will be honored by, right, is the understanding of the plight that has happened in this country. That is more honorable than putting black paint on your face. 1,000%.
I hear you. I guess like back to Destiny's thing, right? Where Irish and Italian people had so much trouble when they first got here. And I am curious as to why you think it went away. I think it was just easier to go mainstream
This is
because they're
what it
kind of
sounds
white.
like to donate.
But
Exactly why it
Some
went away.
things are so
Oh,
At
connected
least
with
we're
one thing,
not
many
them,
of them
is why it
cannot
went away.
be
I
changed
don't.
again.
I don't know if I agree with that, but go on.
well, we
Go
can
ahead.
circle back to it. But I guess I want black people to get what Irish people got. And
What's
Lucky
that?
Charms.
What's
for
what's
it to
that?
be a distant memory.
It's a distant memory because they were normalized and integrated into the society early on. Like the vast majority of their beefs with other white people are based on mistreatment they faced on a whole other continent before they came to America. And part of their normalization process was to gang up with the other white people against black Americans. And we would be able to save a lot of time by avoiding conversations like this if motherfuckers knew American history.
When the ex-attorney general, Mr. Robert Kennedy, said that it was conceivable that in 40 years in America we might have a Negro president. And that sounded like a very emancipated statement, I suppose, to white people. They were not in Harlem when this statement was first heard, and did not hear, and possibly will never hear, the laughter and the bitterness and the scorn with which the statement was greeted. From the point of view of the man in the Harlem barbershop, Bobby Kennedy only got here yesterday. And now he's already on his way to the presidency. We've been here for 400 years, and now he tells us that maybe in 40 years, if you're good, we may let you become president.
I can't imagine what I said that I can see you
What you
disagreeing with it. I can't see the evil in it.
It's not about being evil. Like,
Okay.
I reiterated again. I said I wasn't going to say it again, but I'm going to say it again.
I'm a slow
You
learner.
you keep ascribing intent to harm. And it's just not the case. Okay. So what you're saying is it's insensitive. And I'm not even a SJW in that sense where I'm like, yo, it's insensitive, Woody. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, in phrasing it like that, what you're doing is you're desensitizing the harm it has caused, leaving room open for that kind of sentiment. And that kind of sentiment is culturally in our history has been used as a cudgel for harm against us in a society.
Do you think you
go ahead?
Do you think you could draw? So here's a question. So it feels like there's two fundamentally different ways that we can engage with the word blackface. So if we say that blackface is the act of putting black paint on your face, I think all of us should disagree that that's what the word means, right? So blackface historically is a white person attempting to do a racist caricature that also contributes to the denigration of black people or the degradation of black people. Like this is like what blackface was historically, right? Like for minstrel shows. So big.
No, for accuracy, if we're talking about people acting like black people in a mocking way, that would be considered a minstrel. Darkening your face with the makeup is considered blackface. The reason why these things are closely linked and why we don't sit here and separate the two is because minstrels were the only thing that utilized blackface. I mean, that's its fucking roots. You're not going to rehab blackface when its sole purpose has been about mocking black people for damn near 2 centuries.
And no reasonable person's for that.
Yeah, sure. So one question would be like, is there a meaningful difference between, I'm going to say, quote unquote, blackface today, where you're darkening your skin with the attempt to emulate a black person genuinely versus doing blackface in a more degradatory way where you're just trying to make fun of the way somebody looks. So maybe like a comparable thing would be like a white girl wants to wear a Japanese garb to like a kimono or whatever to like a dance, and then another white girl just wants to wear a bunch of crazy Chinese stuff and call herself Ching Chong or whatever and be really racist. Like, is there a difference between these types of things, or is it all the same?
Good evening, Mr. Unioshi.
Why is he constantly trying to compare, like, clothing to blackface? Why not compare yellowface to blackface? You know, the shit they used to do back in the day where they would slant motherfuckers' eyes, make them a yellowish hue, give them a pair of dentures that are almost too big for their fucking mouth. For some reason, Asians, unlike black people, are able to tell white people that something is offensive, and then there's not much of a debate about it.
My stomach is turning watching this.
Watching this feels just really dehumanizing.
This is really racist. The Asian guy is not human. He's clearly not supposed to be human.
An early example of the way Asian men are portrayed as gross.
I think it's sort of like, oh, well, the Asians are louder now, and they'll get mad at us if we do straight up yellow face.
It's like, is there a difference between these types of things, or is it all the same?
No, I think everything exists on the spectrum.
Sure.
I don't think it's black and white at all.
So then do you think that like they're because I noticed one thing that's a little unfair on Woody's side is that when we say blackface, when we talk about like historically how has blackface been used, the type of blackface that was used historically wasn't just looking black. It was doing like a black caricature. It wasn't just, dressing up as or darkening the skin, right? There was more that went along with it. So is there ever a world where what Woody is talking about, where it's just darkening the skin, but it's not doing like a racist caricature? Is that fundamentally different enough from minstrel shows or historic blackface to be like its own thing? Or does it all still get called blackface and it's more or less the same thing?
I think all of this is contingent on the current society in which these acts occupy.
Sure,
And
that's
so-
what Woody's saying, though, right? Like Woody's saying that in a future society where we don't have as much of a differentiation between the outcomes of white people and black people, that we could theoretically, darken our skin if we want to dress up like a historical figure. Like some kids dress up as George Washington or Abe Lincoln and they put on a wig. Maybe some other kid dresses up as some black figure like Obama and he darkens his face a little bit. Like, is this ever an acceptable world?
Since I just brought up Yellowface and they seem determined to tie whether or not they can do offensive shit to us based on our social economic outcomes, let's look at the Asians for a second. For most Asian groups, if you look at their social economic standings, they are doing better than most white Americans. So why aren't white Americans running around trying to bring back Yellowface?
In this utopia that we're building,
Mm-hmm.
if it has the history that the U.S. has, I don't see that as being an acceptable behavior. I see that as being, I still see it as being disrespectful. But this is me living in 2020, not in 3020 where Woody's living, right? I don't see. I see a growth of human. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but as society progresses, it gets more progressive.
Seems that way,
right? And I think the reason that is because we start to develop language and we start to develop understanding of the differences in a more intricate way, right? And so we start to peel back some of the things that we've done in the past to acquiesce to our desires or our cultural norms in order to massage the current standards of society, right? That's why progression happens. And so in Woody's world, he's saying we should be able to dress up like blackface. And in my view of, and this could be a ideological split. I could be wrong. But in my view, it says that it skews more towards understanding and saying a white couple that has a white kid saying, yo, you don't need to put black paint on your face to dress up like your favorite basketball player. This is why, son, because if you forget the history, you're condemned to repeat it. That's an old saying, right? And this is why we say 9/11, right? 9/11, never forget. The Holocaust, never forget. It's not to continue to play victimhood, but it's to carry on the legacy in order that it never happens again.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a meaningful difference between, like, earlier you brought up the example for Woody's example of just darkening the skin to look like a basketball player. You mentioned wearing a Star of David pendant and, like, you know, walking around like you were a Holocaust victim. Like, I feel like a better comparison would be like, let's say we reach someplace, or even today, somebody decides they want to dress up as like Larry David or, you know, Jerry Seinfeld or whatever. Is that is that bad? Because I think both of those guys are Jewish, right? Like, is that like a bad, like, anti-Semitic thing to do because those guys are Jewish? Like, what if you have like a really small nose and you apply some makeup or some plastic stuff to like make your nose a little bit bigger to look more like them? Like, would that be like an anti-Semitic caricature the same way targeting the skin would be blackface? Or this is somebody in chat said it best. This is like a white nationalist recruiting video.
I don't pretend to speak for the Jewish community, and I wouldn't, but I would defer to them and how they feel about that. But if you're just asking my opinion on it, if there's any stereotype that has been marketed and deemed as negative in nature that can be used towards a people for any kind of oppression, then I think it should be avoided.
Macklemore got himself into trouble on Friday at an event in Seattle when he dressed up in a wig, fake beard, and prosthetic nose that many saw as an offensive collection of Jewish stereotypes.
Down in Georgia, a Republican ad has had to be pulled after it was found to be using photo manipulation to advance an anti-Semitic message. Take a look at this ad supporting Republican David Perdue, saying, breaking, Schumer spending $3 million in Georgia for Jon Ossoff. So you have Chuck Schumer, obviously minority leader in the Senate there, and then the candidate, Jon Ossoff, or at least most of the candidate, because that's not actually all of him. Take a look at this photo from 2017, which they used. They took him and they artificially made his nose larger.
Because my thing is, what do we lose? If you want to dress up like Larry David, right? Dress up like Larry David. Why must you make your nose bigger? You're not losing anything by
you lose some
perpetuating.
authenticity out of the outfit, right? Is the whole point.
People won't know you're Larry David. Although I don't think he has a big nose.